we're not just trying to survive and making ends meet. We're really thriving, we're turning adversity into advantage. If they don't respect us, let's earn the respect. If we don't feel like part of the team, let's become part of the team. This is the best time ever to do this. So I want to focus a little bit more versus focusing on going into remote. I want to just focus on advancing our career. So let's get started. Where do we start? First of all, you can't know where you're going until you know where you're at. So there are two different things you can do. You can do a SWOT assessment. For those of you that have never heard of SWOT, it's basically looking at your work, your career, in 4 different ways. You have the strengths, so you look at all the strengths and positive issues that are happening in your work. Weaknesses, then you look at all the things that you dislike or that are not working out. Opportunities and threats. It's a wonderful way to really look at it from the inside out, but also from the outside in with the threats. And if you prefer, if you don't like this exercise, you can just list, the pros and cons of your situation right now. And that's going to really help you see where you might want to go. The baseline is very important. Without it, you can't move forward. It's like making, a journey without having a starting point. So think about that. So what are the different things I can do with my career? I'm going to give you just 4 possibilities. I'm sure there's more. Put them in the chat box. First of all, you can simply get a new client or an employer or a job that, has higher pay or maybe has some characteristics of what you want to do. It doesn't necessarily have to be higher pay. Maybe you want to, you're a medical interpreter and you want to work in a children's hospital to see how that works. Or maybe you want to get off a certain type of medical interpreting into another. Another thing you can do is just specialize in a different field. If you're working mostly in the courts, maybe you want to do conference interpreting. And I'm not talking just about occasionally doing it. I'm saying, a conscious consideration of taking your career into a different route. Changing the core function of your work. I'm going to explain this a little bit later. Or, there's always that 4th option is really changing jobs completely. And we have to periodically think through these issues to figure out where we are and where we want to go in our interpreting careers, but also, in general, in our own lives. So if you're just trying to get a new client or a new job, maybe for higher pay or for other reasons, I'm going to give you nothing new here. It's just a refresher. Obviously you got to take that resume out and work on it. Resumes get outdated, on a yearly basis. It helps to really reassess also as part of that reassessment of where you are. And if you know where you're going, then you can sort of tweak it towards that direction. Make sure that even though nowadays everybody's making their resumes very flashy and all their marketing materials about what they can do, but back it up with facts. It's great to hear that, you're the best in a particular area, but how do you prove that? How do I know that? You just telling me that isn't going to fly. Social media and LinkedIn especially, really important. Getting a mentor or 2. Again, there's professional consulting mentors nowadays in our field, and then there are many, mentors that you can get just from colleagues that work for you, that work with you, that you work for, individuals that you feel can give you a good opinion about where you're going, people that you trust. Marketing directly to clients. That's another way to, leave the agency model and start going into the direct client model. A lot of people are doing that. And then getting aggressive with the whole marketing campaign for yourself. So, it's nothing new here, but just putting out the steps, baby steps. Then there's the other issue of changing specializations. Are you a jack of all trades? I know in community interpreting, depending on the language you work for, it is difficult to specialize. But if you're a Spanish interpreter and you're trying to do everything, you're not going to get good at anything. So again, if you don't have a specialization, maybe you want to continue doing community interpreting, but really hone in on some area that you can excel at, and that can lead you to new paths. So consider that change. If it's something that's you've thought about, then go ahead and talk to interpreters who work in that area. Maybe you're thinking certain things that aren't quite the reality of that work. And so it's really important to investigate and research and ask a lot of questions. So, this is a great time to look at moving to a different specialization. Why not? People think about it, talk about it, but sometimes we need a COVID-19 to just have extra time to get off the hamster wheel and actually analyze where we're going and be more conscious about what we want to do. I'll give it a little example. In my world, there are differences in how we say things. An interpreter who works in healthcare is not necessarily a medical interpreter. It can be an interpreter who works in many settings. So working in a setting doesn't make you a specialist. It's when you embody the work, whether it's court interpreting or conference or legal, and you really understand the culture of that environment, then you're a specialist in that environment. And it does require specialized training. It requires specialized practice. Without that, and specialized testing. A lot of people say, oh, I can do this. But again, where are you backing it up? And those backups can become important components of your brand. Okay, let's go into that third option. Is there more to interpreting than interpreting? A lot of people think interpreting is a flat profession. Usually when you go into an interpreting position, it's not like the department will have interpreting 1, 2, 3, advanced, and so forth. Very few organizations, the UN, and sometimes when you have a huge team, you might have a chief interpreter. But in general, that chief interpreter might go back to being a regular interpreter once that project is done. However, there are all these other fields that we are neglecting and not looking at. Other than interpreter educators and trainers, a lot of interpreters go into training, but we don't see enough interpreters going into management, sales, it's not even on the list, research, consulting, policy making. So again, what do these things mean? Just start looking into this and start thinking, is this something I may want to do? It is a way to advance your career within the field. And a lot of people have, I have a good friend who actually worked as an interpreter for many years, decided he wanted to try out management because, he didn't like the way things were being managed. And let me go into this. He was able, through his efforts, through having a path, get a management job. And a year later, he got back to me and he said, oh my God, I didn't realize what management was all about. It's easy to compare and to look at things from the outside, but when you're managing, you realize how difficult it is and all the limitations you have. I hate managing. I requested to go back to interpreting. And I thought that was amazing because basically, it only reaffirmed his love for interpreting. He prefers interpreting and working with patients than managing interpreters to do that. So again, sometimes you have to step out of your roles, try different paths to really see what you love. And without doing that, he would have never realized how much he loved interpreting. Interpreting research is really needed. We have a dire amount of research related to remote and on-site interpreting and the nuances and the needs related to that. That's incredibly important, and there's so much research that's needed. And I'm talking about research from practitioners, individuals who really have been in the field and are not just looking at it from the outside. And then consultants, they're appearing more and more. These people consult in terms of mentoring and consulting. Doing a lot of other things, such as helping universities set up interpreting programs or helping hospitals improve their interpreting departments. And then policy writing for those that enjoy writing. It can be a very, very interesting field as well, mostly done through grants. So, I'm talking about all these different areas. And again, just as I said in the first couple of choices, start asking questions, interview people, talk to people, go on social media. And even if it's someone you've never met, if you see that they know a lot about their field, you can contact them on social media and say, hey, I've been seeing your posts. You seem to know a lot about this. What does it take to do the kind of work you do? And one big secret I wish I knew when I, was young is ask. Make your wishes known. If people don't know where you're going, they can't help you along. If you don't know where you're going, certainly, you're not really going to get there. It's very important to really have a conscious path and really be on the way to that path. Now that path can change. Maybe you're halfway through the path and you realize, you know what? I thought this is what I wanted, but now that I'm studying it, I'm not gonna necessarily do it. But now you know. See, before it was a wish, it was that persistent wish. One day I'm gonna do this. So again, we need to work through these paths in order to know which way to go. So changing fields, that's always the last option. An average person changes careers 5 to 7 times in their working life. So again, unless you look at this issue really carefully, do I want to continue interpreting for the next 10 years or 5 years? And why? If you really want it, then that's fantastic. You've had a chance to really reflect on it and recommit yourself to what you're doing. And again, if you don't have these exercises on COVID times, then you just will be going through the motions, not even realizing that this is definitely what you want to do. So consider that. These are great times for analysis, for self-analysis, for looking at how we can do things better. And I just find, it's not a COVID crisis. To me, it's a COVID opportunity. Now, 2 quick things. I know my time's running out. First of all, a word about social media. We could do a whole webinar just on that. Definitely increase your presence on social media. It's very important, especially post-COVID. It's just never going to be the same. We will have a lot more going on online, and it's such a great opportunity. I would recommend daily posts, a certain discipline. Start with weekly, then go twice a week, then 3 times a week. But it's really important to have a presence and to contribute. You can't just take from the internet. You really need to contribute, and it just works synergetically when you're, providing information and also getting information. People are connecting with you, and you're making new connections based on, again, the facts, based on important information that you're providing, not just based on, hey guys, does anybody know this? Hey guys, they're the leeches sometimes that show up on the internet. We need to give as much as we get. And that goes for everything in life. You can also look at people on the internet that you admire and start connecting with them and really raising your network, because it's through networks that people start finding out what's going on, what's available, what's open, and great conversations and opportunities can arise. And then you can always go further, consider a blog or a vlog or a post podcast or a YouTube channel, or creating your own website, which nowadays is quite important, especially for those of us that are self-employed. A quick word about branding. You definitely want to think through having a brand. You have a brand, whether you know it or not. The question is, how strong or weak is it? And these are some of these are considered 6 very valuable attributes to a brand. And if you think through all of these with, some help, hopefully, from colleagues or mentors, you will really see that you can create and establish a very cohesive brand that has a very key voice, so that whenever people think about you, they're going to think about your values. They're going to think about, where you are and what you can provide. Branding is really, really important. So I already mentioned social media, branding, and then education. Don't read all of this. I'm not going to read it. But basically, you know, right now, certification requires a bachelor in some states for court, does not require it for medical interpreting, but it will require bachelors. So even though most interpreters have bachelors, there are some that don't. And this might be a time that you want to finish up your bachelor that you never got, or go ahead and get that master's degree. It does make a difference. And there's some amazing master's programs, you know, for interpreting that can really help. So again, consider also, if you're going to specialize, get trained in that specialization. I mean, I have so many people who tell me I'm specialized in you know, legal interpreting. Well, where did you get trained? Oh, I didn't. Well, again, you know, if you don't back it up and you're just saying it, it's very different from having all of that under your belt. This is a fantastic time for us to hone our skills, grow in new skills, get new skills, go to all these web universities and take a course on intercultural communication, take a course on professionalism, take a course on, I mean, there's so many topics we can do on anthropology. It will be very helpful. So my time is up. So I've much and